When I was a kid, I used to love to lie down on bed with my dad to tell me stories. He would tell me stories about rivers and hills and fig leaves and vineyards. He was such a good storyteller. I would almost smell the trees and hear the rattling of the leaves and feel the breeze of the air on my cheek. But in fact, that was Palestine. He was telling me about Palestine. That was the Palestine I knew. But in fact, we were in Dubai. The breeze I was feeling was the fan in the ceiling that was pushing the air on us. My dad was born in Palestine in 1934. And when he grew up, he had to leave to find work. And when the war happened in 1967, he tried to come back, but the Israelis didn't let him back. So he got stuck outside and had to travel to many countries, Germany, Jordan, and then Kuwait, and ultimately he ended up in Dubai, where I was born. And with time, I realized that my dad had a story of dislocation, but I also realized that I was having a sort of dislocation. I was in my senior year in high school, and was getting very excited about which college I wanted to go to. And I spoke with my dad about it. And he said, yeah, sure. However, you know, like in the laws in Dubai do not allow you to stay in the country after you're 18 if you don't have a work permit. So when you come back from college, you're going to need to have a job. And I was shocked. I was like, I was born and raised there. How come, like, I mean, I understand that I don't get citizenship, but at least residency. We had a friend, an American friend, who had never left the US, and they got a 10-year multi-entry visa. And I'm the alien who doesn't get a visa? I was very angry, I was very upset. And then it dawned to me, like my father, my story is like all Palestinian stories, like my cousin, like my friends. We're dislocated, we're stateless, we're vulnerable. And that is something we carry with us everywhere. Unwanted, unwelcome, human refuse. One of a Lebanese minister once called us human refuse. And that's when there was a saying that we say often, and that time it rang true to me. And the saying goes that every people have a country in which they live. Except us Palestinians, we have a country that lives in us. In time, it was, I believe, early 1990s, and there was a peace process led by the United States that promised to end our statelessness. So we were very excited. My parents and I, and like thousands of Palestinians, went back and wanted to build our new state. I ended up working in a research center, but then I worked with the official negotiating team because I wanted to do my part in building the country. And I was very excited because I was suddenly, I felt like I was in my place. I was a fish in water. I was with these other Palestinians who were coming from other places where they were not welcome, and all of us were human refuse in one place. While living there, we had to go through Israeli checkpoints or Israeli border crossings in order to get to Palestine because Israel continued to control the borders. So every time we went in, we had to cross and get an Israeli visa because we didn't happen to have Palestinian IDs because my dad was stuck outside. So we used our foreign passports to get an Israeli tourist visa to go to Palestine, to go to my father's village. And we had to do that every 3 months because the visa was only for 3 months. And sometimes they will just give us 2 weeks. So we'll have to leave and then come back. And then, so we did that for 9 years. And one of the times when we did this was an event that really hit me. There I was with my dad at the Allenby crossing. We had waited, I think, like an hour or two in queue until we finally got to the passport control booth. And the young lady that was there, she was on a platform behind a plexiglass window. And my father hands her his passport. So she looks at it and goes, what's the purpose of your visit? And in my head, I'm going, what's the purpose of his visit? because when I saw her, I could tell that she was around 20, early 20s, and she had a very thick Russian accent, so I knew that she was a new immigrant to Israel from Russia. And there she was asking my dad, what's the purpose of his visit, when he was born 14 years before Israel was even created. But of course, I couldn't say anything, and I kept it in my chest. And my father, very somberly, tells her, I want to visit my sister. She tells him, how long do you want to stay? Or how long do you intend to stay? And he says, 3 months. And she replies, 3 months? That exclamation, as if what he asked for was very excessive. So she said, wait here, I need to check with my superior, so my supervisor. She goes to the room that's next to the booth. 30, 40 minutes later, this skinny guy comes out of the room, tanned, bald, straight features, carrying my father's passport and waving it and saying, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. And I'm boiling, and I want to do something, but my father interjects before both of us regret what I would have done, and tells him, and starts haggling with him to get more. And in fact, he wasn't haggling, he was actually pleading. Because we had no power, he had all the leverage, and we had to sit there seeing my father, 74, having to plead with this Udi character, his name was Udi, I still remember him, to let him go back and see his own native city or village. And until this day, I still remember his face and his wicked smile, because he felt like he was powerful and he could do with us whatever he wanted. He controlled whether we went in or not. And again, like we did, that was like 9 years of that. Ultimately, I got tired of it, and it was really exhausting, and the peace process was going nowhere. And on top of that, there was fighting between the two main Palestinian political parties. It was like a mini civil war. And they ended up having one party controlling Gaza and the other party controlling the West Bank. So we were definitely going in the wrong direction. We weren't going towards independence for sure. So I was very disappointed, very disillusioned, but also didn't see anything useful I could do. So I pondered about, okay, what can I do that could be useful? And a good friend of mine told me about this leadership program in Harvard. So I said, yeah, maybe I'd do something different. Maybe there I can have some perspective and learn some new ideas and some new concepts that are going to help me find what can I do that could be useful. So I went to Harvard, and I loved it, and I had great courses and was looking for answers in those lectures and in those courses. But the best or the greatest lesson I learned was not from those courses. It came from a very different place. I remember I was studying for my final exam in communications, in the arts of communications, which was the next day. It was around like 9 p.m. And as I'm, preparing the speech that I wanted to do for my final, I get a message on my email, in my Outlook, that pings, and it's Natasha, our Israeli colleague who was responsible for social events. So I open the email, and it says that they're doing this wine tasting and selling Israeli wines as a fundraiser. And I get very perturbed and upset, because you think, okay, it's just wines, but you don't know what's the backstory, right? So I was very angry. I said, okay, the hell with my exam. I put it away, and I start drafting my response email to her. And of course, I'm at Harvard, so of course I need to wordsmith and be passive-aggressive but polite. So I'm wordsmithing, and it's like 3 a.m. after 6 million drafts. And I write something like, thank you, Natasha, for this great initiative. It's great that you're fundraising for this great cause, medical research. I noticed that you said that you're selling Israeli wines, but you didn't distinguish between wines made in Israel and wines made on Palestinian land that was illegally taken by Israeli settlements. So you might want to distinguish those, because I'm sure there are some people that would not want to buy wines that were produced on land that was illegally confiscated or annexed from Palestinians. Thank you very much. And I made sure to reply all, because I wanted everybody to get that they were getting misinformed and they weren't getting the full picture, but also to make my Israeli colleagues understand that I was not going to let them get away with this information. Of course, once the email went out, my Israeli colleagues were all very upset with me. They wouldn't speak with me. But others in the school actually were very happy. And they said, thank you for telling us, raising our awareness. And with time, my Palestinian friend Wasim, after a few weeks, he decided, let's try to bury the hatchet and let's have a conversation about this. So he organized that we meet in a classroom, and it was around 6 p.m. So it was most people were out of the school. It was getting dark, and as I'm coming close to the classroom, I was the last one. I was a bit late. It was a very well lit room, and it was one of those that were set in an arc, so I could see all of their faces. And I noticed that all of them were genuinely upset and hurt, like I injured them. And I thought it was strange. Like, I mean, I thought we just had a political disagreement. I didn't think they were hurt personally. But I couldn't deny what I was seeing. And in that split moment, I felt like glee. I felt gleeful that I gave them a bloody nose. And suddenly now, finally, I'm the one who's giving the blows and not the one who's receiving them. And a split second later, I feel how petty. Like, I didn't achieve anything. So what? So I scored a point, but I'm not closer to Palestinian independence. So it dawned to me that I was the one who was putting myself in that cage of victimhood. It was I who was obsessing about their power and obsessing about my lack of power. So from that point, I decided to take charge of my story and be the author of my story and not to be the subject of my story. And indeed, a few weeks later, our Canadian friend had arranged for a trip to Canada, to Quebec City, in which we would rent vans and drive there. And whether by fate or by luck, Natasha and I ended up being the designated drivers of the same van. So we had 10 hours to drive to Quebec City next to each other. So we spoke, and of course it was awkward, but I was a different person. And I was actually able to hear her story and to hear about how in the Soviet Union, her grandmother was actually a very famous pianist that everybody was proud of. And that her parents were academics that, because they were Jewish, their career was stunted. They couldn't go very far. So when they got the opportunity to go to Israel, immigrate to Israel in the 1990s, they jumped on the occasion. But when they started like packing their stuff and wanting to ship them, the Russian authorities did not let them take her grandmother's piano. And Natasha looks at me and says, from that point onwards, I decided I am only Israeli. And I got rid of everything Russian in me. And I got that. I knew what that was like. I knew what it's like to think that you belong somewhere, only to be told when you're an adult that you don't, that you're not wanted. And while I continued to have disagreements with Natasha, in fact, I disagree on most of things, but I was able to stop that from denying me my ability to have a conversation with her. Because I realized that events happen, but how we make sense of them is really up to us. I know I'm over time, but there's this one thing I want to say, that this year was really difficult for me, for all of us actually. And it was really very hard for me. Just like I was disillusioned with the peace process 15 years ago, I couldn't believe that the world would witness a genocide month after month and they would do nothing. That our lives really didn't matter. It didn't matter the deluge of real-time footage of massacres happening, and all we got were demonstrations and politicians giving lip service while sending more weapons. And it was then that Harvard lesson came back to me, and I realized that, yes, that is true. And yes, we do feel betrayed, and we do feel that the world let us down. But we're not giving up, and we are standing up. And we're, in fact, double fierce to have our freedom and to fight for our freedom. Because every people have a country in which they live. And we, Palestinians, have a Palestine that lives in each one of us. And no one and nothing is going to stop us. Thank you.